sequence, the chronology of our...
Please come.
Welcome, Mini. Do sit down, please.
Good morning, sir. Morning.
Good morning. Good afternoon. Sit down, please.
Thank you.
Mini, you have a wonderful background, excellent academic record,
Thank you, sir.
wonderful hobbies, and I would like to, during the course of the interaction, would love to, but I think apart from the hobbies, we'll discuss something even more interesting and passionate I'm about.
Excuse me, sir. I want to first hear good morning or namaste to somebody because we never spoke.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
थोड़ा जल्दी दौड़ के आ रही हो.
मैं जब एंटर हुई थी मैम तब कहा था
okay.
जी मैम तब कहा था.
Sorry.
With a good smile, and you did wish me, and I saw you, and I think that was the best way to enter the room.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, my voice might be a little low.
Okay.
It's not low, it is tempered and polite. Your voice is fine. I wish I had that kind of. So, Mini, you have some connect with Bhind.
Yes, sir.
And what is Bhind well known for?
Sir, Bhind is well known, perhaps notoriously, for the Chambal region. And it's not there anymore, but the dacoits that were prevalent in the area.
Can you tell me and shed some light on why the banditry and the dacoity problem arose in Bhind, Morena, Agra, and any special reason? And you said the Chambal.
Yes, sir.
There's another word after Chambal.
Chambal.
Ravines.
Ravines, yes, sir.
How are ravines created and how do they help banditry?
So ravines are created because of topographical reasons, because of the lithography, the kinds of rocks and soil that there is, and it helps in banditry because it creates hiding spaces, especially in terms of encounters with the police and armed forces. So that is one reason why it took deep roots in the Chambal ravines. And also, I believe, sir, Bhind is, even today, Bhind is not the Chambal ravines is not a very developed area. There are issues with employment opportunities. There is development deficit. But thankfully, fortunately, the dacoity era has been over because of the efforts of the MP police and because of the efforts of UP and Rajasthan police, because it's a tri-junction area that also in a way fostered the dacoits.
Two questions now.
Yes, sir.
Tell me one thing. Are they bandits? Because the bandits say that we are not bandits, we are bagis. What is the difference between banditry and being a bagi?
Sir, I believe bagi is a euphemism that a person would like to use to perhaps defend the wrong things they are doing. But I believe the things they are doing cannot be justified no matter what words they use. It is wrong to kill people. It is wrong to rob people of their property and of their lives. And much better means can be used for whatever their grievances are. That is what I personally believe.
I'm sure you do not belong to the generation where there were films made like Chambal Ki Kasam, Mujhe Jeene Do, etc. But they said
Even Pan Singh Tomar.
Pan Singh Tomar.
There is a rebellion against injustice.
Yes.
And I think with the word, with your permission, sir,
No, sir.
With the word you use that is a euphemism, no, the two words mean different. Bandit is a person who lives off outlawry, looting, etc. A rebel is a person who has a victim card to play. He has not been denied justice and he has rebelled against an unfair judicial system or social construction. So a soldier in the Indian Army is forced to become a rebel and get killed.
Yes,
Man
sir.
Singh Tomar. We are just discussing, not unrelated
sir.
to your entry in the room, about Raja Man Singh and Lakshman Singh and other people who insisted that they would surrender. Man Singh, he was killed, but कि हमको जेल में जब समर्पण करेंगे तो चांदी के थाल में खाने का right मिलेगा and things of that kind. And people like Jayaprakash Narayan and Vijay Ghanshyam Singh had run the mission of peace to pacify the Chambal ravines. So I would not very easily, confuse and say this is wrong all the time, etc.,
Yes, sir.
etc. That's one part of the issue.
So I understand that, sir. There are definitely some reasons that force people into this kind of rebellion and the use of violence, which...
This doesn't justify the use of violence or wanton killing. I would also add to it, because triggered. I belong to a generation closer to his than to yours. Now the problem is that there were people like Raja Man Singh, who were having a Robin Hood kind of a role. They were providing dowry to the needy poor person's daughter. They were providing protection against the atrocities of police or other people, criminal elements. And they were treated like saviors by people also. So it is not as if the dacoits had an image of a demonic, diabolical villain all the time.
Yes.
So there was a bit of a Robin Hood syndrome also.
Yes, sir.
So I don't know, but we have moved across many generations.
Yes, I completely understand and I agree with it to some extent.
Fun set.
Not at all. Many, you mentioned the three police forces, Madhya Pradesh, UP police and Uttar Pradesh police, and you said that they contributed to the elimination of the problem of banditry.
Yes.
But there's a school that says that one or more police forces also contributed to the cause of banditry.
Yes.
Don't disturb my area, operate in other areas, come in, have a safe haven here. Have you heard of these allegations and counter allegations?
Sir, I believe in any kind of such incidents or such a happening, there will always be people and there will always be people in the forces that might be involved in it, and there might be people who have been putting efforts to end it. So I have not read about any evidence about it, but this could be true. This could be true, sir.
You have raised a point that there always be people who are siding with the underworld and there are those who are siding with the constitution.
Yes, sir.
You are suppose a district magistrate of Hind or a district magistrate of Agra or a district magistrate of Dholpur. And there is a problem, say, either of banditry. It has come down, it has not been eliminated. It does exist. The problem of smuggling is very much there.
Yes.
As a district magistrate or the superintendent of police of a border district, what measures will you take to ensure that there is no illicit smuggling of firearms, of illicit liquor, or banditry and contract killing and also kidnapping for ransom? These are the crimes that happen only where there is a porous border.
Yes, sir.
How will you address this issue if you are a district magistrate in one of the three districts?
Sir, I believe issues such as these, which come probably under the heading of organized crime to some extent, because they have large networks across different states and different cities wherein they operate. For example, there is an Irani gang in MP that operates in MP that even crosses borders, crosses districts, and so they go off hands of the police. And so I believe it needs a very integrated approach. As the district magistrate of any of these border districts, I believe I would like to work on, first of all, the development of these cities. For example, there is definitely an issue that is, like sir said, there are issues that push people into such things. For example, employment could be one thing. A better education could be another thing through which we can prevent people from joining such bad parts of the society and becoming those disturbing elements in the society. And other than that, I believe that district magistrate and the district police need to work in close coordination to prevent such happenings. So, for example, there can be cameras and at places that are hotspots, so they can be surveilled more closely, and the district police and administration need to coordinate very closely on this, I believe so.
Good response, but these are primarily long-term measures. You are joining there tomorrow. And if you're joining tomorrow, what 3 bullet points would you ensure that from tomorrow, these things will not happen? Do you have anything in mind which you can enforce within the next 24 hours if you're the district magistrate or the senior superintendent of police?
Sir, I think one thing that comes to my mind right now is I will create a list of the people who are on for example, the members and leaders of these gangs that operate in the area, and I will make sure that the police and the administration have a close eye on them in every activity that they have. So if anything of that kind is going to take place, so that we can surveil it, we can control it beforehand, we can preempt it in any ways that are possible.
Very good. I appreciate the idea that you have suggested, but do you think that you said organized crime? In what way is organized crime different from routine crime?
Sir, I might not be aware of the details.
Okay, never mind.
But
organized crime presupposes collusion and complicity of the law enforcement machinery. as a district magistrate or SP, what measures will you take for internal vigilance to see that the black sheep are neutralized in the department?
Sir, I believe the vigilance officers are there in all departments of the government. So that needs to be there. And on my personal level, as the district magistrate, in my official capacity, I will try to talk to the officers concerned and see through it whatever I can. Is if there is anything, and there are complaints, for example, Lokayuktas are there. There come regular complaints about corruption and mishandling of certain kinds and bribe taking, and all of those things come around. And I will try to take cognizance of those issues so that whoever these officers are, they are on my list so that I can see.
Very good. Now my last question to you pertaining to the same problem. These are all long-term measures. You are an officer in a hurry. And it is something that every person carries with himself or herself, her reputation. Don't you think as a district magistrate or SP, to go after the grey officers and their general reputation of honesty from the people, and then identify and guillotine those who have a tainted reputation?
Sir, I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
To identify, perhaps too complicated. There are those who have a reputation of being mixed up with the criminals.
Yes, sir.
And who will tell you this? The people.
Yes, sir.
Now the course of action is you. You give it for a further inquiry, or shoot first, apologize later. First deal with them departmentally, suspend them, and then order the inquiry. What will be your course of action?
Sir, I believe in this case, I would first suspend the officer so that the inquiry can take place objectively, because if they are still involved with the organization, the inquiry could be, they could get involved in it, and the result of the inquiry could be biased, or so I think I would suspend them with while telling them that this is only for the duration of the inquiry, and after the result of the inquiry, the suggestions come.
Sir.
I've been reading your extracurricular activities and interests, and very interestingly, you have said reading literary fiction and watching American and British comedy talk shows and teaching. V.S. Naipaul said just before his death that the novel is dead, by which he meant the literary novel is dead. Do you agree?
Sir, I'm sorry,
He made the statement that the novel is dead as an art form.
No.
What did he mean by it? Since you have said that your preference is reading literary fiction.
Sir,
He was a literary writer.
Yes, sir.
Why did he say, and he had written many novels, he won the Nobel Prize also. Why did he say that the novel is dead?
Sir, I haven't read him personally, and I haven't...
No, he was making a general statement.
Yes, sir.
He was not saying that his novels are dead. What he is saying, I think he was hinting at something with our present day culture.
Yes, sir.
When he said that the novel is dead.
Yes, sir, I think what he could mean is that a style of writing is over. For example, I'm sorry, sir.
I think what he was implying is that, literary novels, first of all, are very dense.
Yes, sir.
Most of them are generally quite long.
Yes, sir.
And I think what he was implying is that in this current instant noodles age that we are living in, where people's attention spans are limited, nobody has the time for an 800-page novel.
Yes, sir.
Of course, there are others who say the novel can never die because, it represents an art form. It represents a way of telling a story which is timeless and which will endure the. So I thought since a person who reads literary fiction, you would be more invested in the success or the failure of the novel. Anyway, let's move on from there. Your second interest, you say, is watching American and British comedy talk shows. What would you say are the main differences between the American sense of humor and the British sense of humor?
So, so far as I have seen, I think the British sense of humor, the British comedians are more subtle, and there are many local jokes that probably someone coming from outside UK wouldn't understand. But American style of comedy is a bit more cosmopolitan, maybe because of the demography that America has and gains from. So some of the English jokes that I do not understand, it happens many times that I do not understand English jokes, and but American comedy has a more panoramic view of, it's a more cosmopolitan kind of comedy. So
you mean American comedy is not more America-centric? I think many of the jokes that American comic artists make are very very relevant to America. I mean, people outside America may have difficulty understanding them. Don't you think so?
Yes, so that could be true. Maybe it could be because I have watched American.
Would you name a show
Yes.
for us? Would you name a show for us?
Sir, I watch the Daily Show with Trevor Noah a lot. That would be my favorite show for now.
And what about other I mean, so Trevor Noah is your favorite.
Yes,
Which
sir.
country is he from?
So he's from South Africa. He's currently living in America, in New York.
Okay, let's move on from the talk show. Economics is your subject.
Yes, sir.
What is the major crisis facing the WTO today?
So the World Trade Organization, first of all, is facing a crisis of confidence. The countries of the global south, as we call them, have been in a way not involved in the decision making. For example, in the recent summit that they had, some of the most developed countries, G7 and some other countries, came up with a joint statement initiative wherein they said you take it or leave it. For the global south, there is the basic principle of one country, one vote is being flouted on an everyday basis, and we do not see consensus coming over many other issues. One of the issues, maybe the current issue, is a waiver, an IPR waiver for COVID-19 medicine supplies, and that is also seeing a vast delay. For example, many people in Africa have not been vaccinated. They have not received the first shot, and we still see a lot of delay in the IPR waiver. And because it's a consensus-oriented organization, we cannot get anything out of consensus. It is very difficult for decision making, and most countries prefer to prioritize their national interest over global health interests, and that is, I believe, one of the most.
But there is a more immediate administrative challenge facing the WTO.
So the appellate body does not have members, and countries like USA have been blocking the appointment of appellate body members. And
Which was one area in the recent past where India did not go with the consensus and said, no, unless you do this, we are not going to be party to this.
Sir, I'm not aware. So maybe.
Agricultural subsidies?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Doha Development Agenda.
Okay, I'll pass you on. Thank you.
I'll get back to the banditry and dacoity. Do you think there is a relationship besides poverty and feudal oppression, a relationship between caste and gender issues? I bring to your notice a film called Bandit Queen. The Honorable Chairman mentioned a lot of films. There are other films like Jis Desh Mein Ganga Behti Hai. There's another film which goes earlier even to Mother India, where Birju becomes a dacoit and the mother shoots him down because there is a kind of
Yes.
sense of morality and ethics, and its son doesn't take it over. So I would say that if you go back to Bandit Queen, it's been a controversial film for a variety of reasons, from frontal nudity and a landmark judgment from Supreme Court. But here we come to the protagonist in the film, who went on to become a member of the parliament and was assassinated here. So here was also a problem, if I recall, my memory serves me right. The husband was supposed to dominate and milk the political position which the wife had got, and the wife got assassinated because some contacts with somebody said was a caste element involved. The person who shot her down was from Uttarakhand, if I remember, very proud of his Kshatriya heritage, did not like this Malla woman there, and she had taken to the path of crime and committed brutalities because she had been abused as a young girl. So I would like to say that if you talk in terms, it is not only the ravines of Chambal. The UP Badlands included Kalpi, Urai, Jalon, Banda, etc. Now, this case was gender, caste, complicity not only of bureaucrats and corrupt politicians, but political support at the highest level, perhaps.
Yes.
So all this gets in. So can we address this problem without addressing? He was repeatedly asking you that if we wait for a long-term solution, then it may never be feasible.
Yes.
So what are the I'm not asking you to go over the same ground again. I'm only trying to keep in mind, and also other parts of the country where this might be there. You could have Veerappan.
Yes.
And sandalwood smuggling,
Yes.
and a long duration of activity in the forests of Karnataka. So I would like you to, but we'll move away from this. I just wanted to bring this to your notice because the conversation might follow along these lines also. One last question which I have to ask you from my side. Can you tell me the ancient name of the river Chambal?
I'm not aware.
It is Charmanyavati.
Okay.
Now, why I'm asking you this question is a very interesting point which Bill Aitken makes in his book Rivers of India. And ma'am is an expert on rivers of India and culture, etc. So I'll leave it to her to ask substantial questions. He makes a very interesting point that because Chambal is a longer river, but is considered a tributary of Jamuna, Jamuna is a far shorter, smaller river, but has greater cultural impact because it's born in Himalayas. So Himalayas' sanctity dilutes the brand equity of Chambal. So Chambal is remembered as dacoits, dacoitry, Chambal ke Daku, Chambal ke Bihar, but Chambal is forgotten as a river in itself. And it becomes that. Would you agree with that?
Sir,
Or would a person coming from that area would say, "Nahi, Chambal hamare liye to badi important river hai."
sir, I believe in this case that public memory is rather too short, and we tend to associate it with the elements that we have seen, and I myself being part of that right now. So, sir, yes, we should.
I'm not talking of public memory about dacoitry and banditry.
Yes, sir.
If you live on the banks of a river, let's say Narmada,
Yes, sir.
which doesn't originate in Himalaya, it originates in Amarkantak,
Yes,
goes into Gujarat, near somewhere near Sopara, Surat. It is referred to as a river which washes Ganga's sins. You go to Kaveri, which begins at Tal Kaveri, goes to Pumpuhar and Nagai Pattanam. It again is called Dakshan Ganga. So that is what haunts the memory of Indian people, that something which is consecrated in Himalayas, myths, legends, lore, history, our racial memory, sort of overshadows a river where we live next door to it. How would you, coming from Madhya Pradesh also has Narmada,
Yes, sir.
which has great sanctification,
Yes, sir.
sanctity, and Chambal is also there.
Sir, I think there would need to be a long-drawn campaign for changing that image, and that would include the local people.
Long-drawn plans don't interest me. Long run, as Lord Mencken said, all of us are dead. At least I will be dead. I mean, I hope you live to see all this. There is another very ambitious river linking project, which also has been disturbing me because it links Betwa with Kane, and having some relationship with the Orcha. I feel very disturbed that this is going to create ecological havoc and not have commensurate benefits in terms of economy. And once you do it, is irreversible. What are your reactions on this one? The great grand river linking project.
Yes, sir. So there have been debates about interlinking.
Not there have been debates. I want your opinion.
So personally, I think it is going to have a lot of damage, and we are not sure about the benefits, and
Thank
the
you.
costs could definitely.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
I'll come back to the comedy part. Since you're going to be an IAS officer and you said you like British comedy, so you name one very famous British comedy which is based on the interaction between the minister and the secretary. It's one of the most wittiest comedies which brings out the realities in a very nice, subtle way of the relationship that happens, how one is trying to outsmart the other.
Ma'am, an example of it?
Which comedy of Britain? Very famous. Very famous. Yeah, I've already given you the clue. So the relationship between the minister and the secretary is basically revolves around that. Who is overpowering who? Because there's a sort of a thin line between who's more powerful.
Ma'am, I'm sorry.
Very famous British comedy.
She has
I'm
not
sorry,
watched
ma'am,
it.
I'm not.
Yes, Minister.
Yes, Minister.
You must watch that.
Yes, ma'am.
If you're going to be an IAS officer, you must watch that.
Because it goes into the relationship between the Prime Minister and civil servant.
Yes.
And then it became yes, Prime Minister.
Yes, Prime Minister. Then
Because the
first
minister
is yes,
becomes
Minister,
Prime
then
Minister
yes,
thanks
Prime
to his advice
Minister.
of the bureaucrat.
Yes. And in terms of the difference, I think you could also consider saying that British comedies are more witty, I think. And the American comedies are more like, you say, a little...
No, ma'am, permit me, with your permission, sir. I think the problem is the generation gap.
Generation.
Her generation is watching American comedies and relating to them in various OTT platforms, and we are referring back to
the way we saw it.
Like, I have a problem of understanding. I've never got the hang of, the Jewish mother jokes in American comedy or the canon. I can relate to the British humor, which you find less comprehensible than the American humor, but the in references to American society are very, very different, So So, I mean, I don't worry too much. But whatever you are referring, have illustrations.
Could you highlight some points or note? What do you think? Why do you think you want to be an IAS officer?
Ma'am, while I was working for a newspaper for about 2 years, I had the ability to act as a feedback channel between people and some administrators in districts. And some of the very basic problems that I saw that people could not communicate through, and if we only had more people-friendly administration, and I think that I would be suitable for that. And I'm a person who wants to communicate with the people at the grassroots and listen to them on a regular basis and act upon them. And that is one thing that makes me want to.
Yeah, so being in the press and in journalism and mass media would have been a good channel for that. Why IAS? Why government? What is the added benefit or added contribution that you can give to the this concept that you want that between people and the government?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, as a journalist, I could perhaps only report on some things. Obviously, journalism is a great contribution to democracy and administration. But as an administrator, I personally believe that I can contribute more by acting upon the things that come to my knowledge.
Well, that's every officer does that. Coming back to press, what is your take on the fake news and the toolkit?
Yes, ma'am.
You've heard about the famous toolkit?
Yes, ma'am.
And the fake news. Just share your views on both these aspects.
Ma'am,
How fake is fake news and how authentic is the toolkit?
Ma'am, about fake news, I believe with the rise of social media and with the rise of these WhatsApp forwards, I would say, because people go through only short clips, people don't have the time to go through the entire thing. So they watch short clips and they make up their mind, and these clips are often generated intentionally. Only the controversial parts or the questionable parts are published, and people don't have the time to go back and see the whole video or read the whole news. And so it gets to people's minds, and because of social media algorithms, it all gets
What would you do
multiplied.
to stop such a thing? Because you have been inside the press also.
Yes, ma'am.
So without, obviously the first thing will be freedom of the press gone. But what action would you take to sort of bring this to a halt?
I believe one initiative by Alt News is very appreciable, that they go to the root of the issue and they confirm whether or not this news is true. They come with the entire video, the context and everything. So that is one thing that a person from the media can do, that confirming the news, going to the grassroots and telling people what exactly happened and where is it that the Chinese whisper happened, that people lost the story, lost the track of things.
And the toolkit?
Remember about the toolkit, I think it's a phrase that became rather political because it involved protests, including students from Karnataka while protesting against the Citizenship Amendment Act. And it started with Greta Thunberg, who have been protesting against the climate
So what
change.
exactly is a toolkit? Can you tell me in your press terms, as a person who worked in the press, what exactly is a toolkit?
Ma'am, I believe toolkit is a procedure that you can use.
It's a media plan.
Yes.
It's a media plan that the PR people and everybody does, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So how effective a good toolkit can be in creating a sabotage in society, in any action of anybody, or creating a wrong impression, how effective can be and how it can be controlled?
Ma'am, the sabotage we have seen, for example, there have been bots that have been created to amplify fake news in Philippines, in America, in India. And it can also be used positively to amplify positive messages, which is not happening that often currently. But better reach to people can be to the right people who are sitting on the fences, who, for example, take up weapons for some reasons. They can be prevented by giving the right news at the right time. So if we are able to use platforms which connect with the people, which people have the time and the resources to get to, then I believe it could prevent a lot of social evils.
Okay, a little diverted you were, but okay, I think I pass it on.
You, all the respected board members, and I feel that you are an outstanding candidate with tremendous self-confidence, dignity, and self-confidence. You conducted yourself very well with immense confidence and gave the answers that were crisp and intellectually honest also. Where you were not very sure, you expressed that in so many words, and this is what matters. Regarding your hobbies, I would like to understand, nothing is being recorded. Are you sure they are your hobbies, or somebody asked them to write them as your hobbies?
Sir, I haven't explored much, but these are things that I genuinely do. I do watch a lot of John Oliver, Trevor Noah. Maybe they might be a little
Okay, then they have
narrow.
to give, because we would say that hobbies should be one thing that you should be knowing more than all of us taken together.
Yes, sir.
So please work on your hobbies. I feel that way, and of course, you are the best.
And it's an interest, actually, not a hobby.
Sir.
That was an interest also. It's not, watching talk show is not a hobby. Hobby is, watching something is
It
not
is
a
not
hobby.
my interest, sir. And if
could
it's
be-
not my interest, you should be at least knowing more than me.
Yes, sir.
I stand corrected, but if it is your interest, then your interest should at least give you more knowledge about
Correct.
that than what I would possibly, because
Yes,
I'm a layman as far as these are concerned. Respected members may like to give their remarks, please.
I would agree with the Mrs. The problem is the moment you mention as your hobbies British comedy talk shows and American comedy talk shows, you are laying a trap for yourself. Had you just said watching American comedy talk shows, there would be no expectation of comparisons. You would not go back to yes minister, yes prime minister, and so on. So again, there you don't say talk shows. You mention a specific talk show, but that becomes kind of obsessive watching.
Exactly.
Is that again is not a hobby. My problem was with the question which he asked you about fiction. You said reading literary fiction. All fiction is hopefully literary. There can be pulp fiction, but there's a special genre of literature. When he asked you about novels, you seem to be unaware of the genre of literary fiction called a novel. It is not Vidyadhar,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
our Nepal. The problem is, if you are not comfortable with novel, you could have shifted the interview to your favor by saying that I like fiction, which is not novel, but short fiction, which is stories. But then you have to be again on firm ground. If that is your hobby, what kind of stories do you like? Do you write women writers? Do you like... novel is something which has emerged in Europe, in France and Russia. Lukash's work on historical novel goes back into that. But if you come to other literary forms, there will be short story form, would be fiction, would be somewhere else. But you should be on firmer grounds. All I would like to advise is, I think I was tempted, to tell you all this because I think that is where you are laying a trap for yourself. Your hobbies section doesn't convince me at all. And as the Honorable Chairman said, that it would almost appear that somebody advised you that reading is a neutral thing, say fiction, but then you are specifying literary fiction. It is opening a...
So when you say literary fiction, you are expected to know the literary greats,
Yes, sir.
all of them.
Sir, I've only, I started reading after my 12th standard, and the thing with me is,
What is a novel which you remember? Or a story which you remember? What is the author which you remember?
so The God of Small Things is my favorite.
Sorry?
The God of Small
Arundhati
Things,
Roy.
favorite novel.
So if you're writing in your this about literary novels and whatever, you should have a little more wider perspective of all this because you will be asked questions on that. And even your interpretation, your understanding of the quotation of Naipal ji was little not too clear to you. He just meant to say that this is like now people are getting away from the novel. They're not showing any interest in the novel. When you went into very literary, dissecting the words, so you have to understand in what context the word was said. And so wider knowledge of whatever you have written in your hobby and interest section is going to be important because more and more questions will be focused on that. Besides the economy part, which you did quite well, I think.
You did brilliantly with everything else.
And this is very important
The
because
hobby
people
is
want
the
to
only one which
know
left.
about your personality. It brings out your personality. And I think your question is good and she also is.
Where is your interview?
So 12th May. 12th of May.
12th May.
Sir,
Oh, you have plenty of time.
Yeah.
Correct.
You can indulge in your hobbies.
Any question that you'd like to ask us?
Sir, I wanted to ask what all I can do to work on my hobbies part because that is the weakest part. For example, in literary fiction, I have read maybe limited number of books, but the thing with me is I reread those books. I go back to those books and reread them again.
That is again being an obsessive fixation. I would say if reading fiction is your hobby, you keep reading whatever is appearing. I may ask you, what is the last novel you read, which you did not reread? What was the last novel or story you read? So much is coming, so much. Gitanjali Shree's Hindi novel has just been longlisted for Booker, translated by a foreigner into English.
At least you should be aware of, the Pulitzer Prize winner, the Booker Prize winner, especially.
I think for the first time, an Indian language book has been longlisted in translation in Booker. There you should, who are the Indians who have won Booker Prize? What is White Tiger about?
Yes,
What is... even you can go back to Arundhati Roy.
Even what is the difference between literary and commercial fiction, for instance? Since you have mentioned very categorically literary fiction, what is, as someone was saying that, Albert Camus said, Oscar Wilde said, there is no such thing as a moral or immoral book. A book is either well written or badly written.
There is time for you. I would suggest that get hold of a few classics. You don't have to go the classics route, but books which can be talked about at present in the fiction. And don't answer everything literary fiction. I mean, stay with fiction, stay with literature, two separate, and basically keep reading a little, enough to be comfortable about this.
But the question he asked, what was the last literary book you read?
So currently I'm reading The English Patient.
English?
English Patient, Michael Ondaatje's.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
The movie came out of that.
Because that's a very common question that can come. You read literary fiction, which is the last fiction book you read, and then they'll ask you maybe more details about that book. So be prepared for that.
Sir.
I mean, that's what we are saying.
Any other question?
Sir.
The board is of the opinion that you are a very good candidate, and every probability we are certain that you will make it. God bless you.
Just one thing. We did not ask her any current affairs questions. So you have to read the newspapers and be
She
aware.
was working in a newspaper, although even that description is very odd.
Yeah.
Times of India is, according to the owner, Vineet Jain himself, is not in the business of news, but in business of advertising and lifestyle.
Yes.
Now, the second problem is that your designation there was a contributor. A contributor is not a reporter. So the question which ma'am asked you, you are basically a content creator, which is, they are known for their space selling. The Honorable Chairman asked you about paid news, fake news. Times of India is notorious for even selling editorial space.
Yes.
The fake news.
Unabashedly.
Yes, sir.
So I think that is something which you should guard yourself against, that your work in newspaper was not a public service pro bono work. It was comfortable to prepare for civil services and so on. Nothing wrong with it.
So it was actually, as a contributor, I used to write for local supplements, which covered local
But local
news.
supplements are advertisement driven. I mean, I've known that organization
Yeah, exactly.
for 40 years. I was designated an editor in one of their magazines. I was an assistant editor designated more than once. I know the place, what has happened is where the owner comes out and says, we are not in newspaper business, we are into advertising, and we are into, the local edition is, local supplements are entirely advertisement driven and content is created accordingly.
And you may be asked questions, since you are a lady, related to women issues, anything happening in the current affairs, even in the courts related to women issues, anything related to any social issue which is affecting the family life. So you be aware with the newspapers. Be ready because you may be beginning with the headlines. What was the headlines today?
Ma'am, okay.
You don't have a problem at all. You are appearing in May. You have the whole of the month of April. You have half the month of May. And you can be absolutely looking forward to a position in the top, near the top.
You're well
very
prepared, actually. Just that we are just helping you to fine-tune.
Conversation may start with the print on your sari. Is it a Sanganeri print? Is hand block printing? Is it non-chemical dyes? So, anything can lead to any place. So, but I think we're handling it. I'm very, very confident of that. And as the Honorable Chairperson said, you relax.
But keep yourself and your hobbies updated with a lot of more information. You'll do very well.
All the best.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you,
God
ma'am.
bless you. Bye-bye.